It's time for PaleoRadio, only on Secular Media Network.
You are now entering PaleoRadio.
Welcome to PaleoRadio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen, on 95.3 FM, 1680 AM, WPRR Grand Rapids. My name is Joe Elder.
I'm Dapper Man, Jeremiah Bannister.
And this is Paleo Radio. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for yet another fantastic segment.
It is going to be. It's totally fantastic. You know, we are 24 episodes in, Joe.
We are. We have Kobe Bryanted it, haven't we? We are 24.
We have. And it's so fun, but yet it feels like it wasn't that long ago. And if you really look at it, we're not even to a half of a year yet.
No. So
it's remarkable.
It's very young, very young. We have a great lineup for you guys. We're going to start off talking about Obama changing his plans on some nuclear deals here in America.
Dastardly. After that, we're going to talk about Stacey Dash and her call for the elimination of Black History Month and awards that celebrate African Americans.
Yep, and this is topped off from what she was talking about with the Oscars. From that, we're going to be moving to the National Review versus Trump and some issues that have been arising there from a nonprofit.
It's a honkin' huge deal. An entire magazine dedicated. They had like 21 authors that dedicated their time speaking on why you should dump Trump, why you need to get rid of this guy. After that, we're going to talk about Hillary Clinton and the killer mic problem that she has. This is by Drew Millard over at Vice.com.
It's just going to be a big old bag of awesomeness.
All episode long. Don't stop listening at all.
We're going to kick it off with the Boston Globe, Rearming for the Apocalypse. This is by Stephen Kinzer. Americans are in near panic over the danger imposed by Islamic terrorists. That danger, however, pales beside an emerging new one. President Obama has proposed a frighteningly wrong-headed plan to modernize our nuclear arsenal at the unfathomable cost of about $1 trillion over the next 30 years. Terror will never even reach 1% of our population. Nuclear modernization increases the prospect of true devastation.
Yeah.
The most sobering of these voices belongs to William Perry, who during the 1970s and 80s directed the development of the air-launched nuclear cruise missiles and later became Secretary of Defense. Now Perry is campaigning against Obama's plan to develop and buy 1,000 new missiles with adjustable nuclear capacity, 100 long-range bombers, and a new fleet of nuclear-armed submarines. He warns that if the plan becomes real, disputes among nations will more likely erupt in nuclear conflict than during the Cold War. Wow.
Dude, tons of money.
$1 trillion.
Yeah, I love the way that just kind of rolls off the tongue. It's like an unfathomable cost of about $1 trillion.
Just a big old
It's about a one big T.
A little T-bone. T-bone steak.
Seriously, they just kind of talk about it like it's nothing. Like it's this kind of, it's very, I don't know, it's just wild. But over the next 30 years, I mean, I guess we can spread it out a little way and say it's not terrible. I mean, $1 trillion in 30 years.
It brings up a whole bunch of different options that we probably don't want to even address. For instance, Kinzer brings up that it could bring up rearmament. Like Russia could begin to rearm itself.
Oh, they already are.
And there you go. We have Cold War 2.0.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was, what was it? The whole modernization thing. I mean, it really does increase our vulnerability. It really does.
Absolutely.
I mean, I agree with the writer of the article. It doesn't increase our security. It increases our vulnerability. Our security, if we took a defensive posture in this world, our defensive security, the nuclear arsenal that we have, is just ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It's historically unprecedented. There's nothing like it in the history of the universe that we know of at all, and we can totally, from protecting our own and leaving it at that, it's already there. So the idea that, well, we're going to go ahead and just modernize all this up to what?
Yeah.
Against whom?
Kinzer says, the first and most obvious reason is that it will certainly lead other countries to seek equivalent arsenals of their own, like we're talking about. It is especially upsetting for Russia, that's our boy, which already feels under increasing American threat as a result of our military maneuvers on its borders and the fact that many of our missiles are positioned in Germany, Turkey, and other countries near its territory.
Yeah.
So we already have these things playing out I think Perry is dead on saying that this is a bigger threat. This is a bigger threat than terrorism.
What an intense thing, right? To have nukes in other countries positioned at you, right? Like, I mean, imagine for a second the idea that Russia finds itself in, where they've got this nation, right? This with tons of loot, a huge nuclear arsenal that's saying, oh, we're going to beef it up even more. And it just as a reminder, we're also talking about this modernization impacting missiles that we've already got positioned at you in Germany, in Turkey, in other countries, kind of right, basically around you, kind of thing. And of course, and then all of a sudden you got, what? Russia said that they're going to bring 5 new strategic nuclear missile regiments into service.
Absolutely.
Of course they are.
Sure they are.
No freaking duh.
Yeah, the same way that if we weren't building up and we saw that they were, what would we begin to do? The same thing. And away we go with the vicious cycle. Kinzer continues in the article and says, the cruise missiles Obama wants to build could be used to deliver either conventional or nuclear payloads. If an air defense controller in another country sees one incoming on radar, he or she would have no way of knowing whether it was armed to destroy a building or an entire city. The temptation to launch a nuclear retaliation could be irresistible. So the other issue that we have here is that some of these things are going to be armed in such a way that they don't really know if it's going to be a nuclear weapon or not, so the response could be nuclear just on reservation alone.
How would you know? I mean, that's a huge thing, this kind of predictability that goes with the bleepy bloops on the screen that you're looking at. If you're saying, oh, look at this thing coming on in, I wonder what that is. And you don't know if it's the difference between a nuke and a conventional thing. That's maybe a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you're dealing with other nuclear-capable countries. I mean, give me a break.
It's definitely playing with fire, right? And if we are we like to say that we're policing the world, or, we're the leaders of freedom, and we're, scanning the globe to free everybody from such tyranny. If we're the ones who are going to do that, then we're the ones who are the most responsible for having to demilitarize ourselves in terms of nuclear weapons. We're going to have to be on the forefront of pulling that back. Instead of rearming ourselves, why don't we look at other avenues and keep nuclear disarmament high on our to-do list? We need to really think about it as something that's important. It's devastating. The after effects and the causes that it can bring are devastating.
Right. And why would you want that? I remember it was Easter of 2002, and I'm in Groton, Connecticut at the submarine base, the Naval Submarine Base, New London. And we're out there, and every single year there's a group of people, Christians in the town, who protest the fact that there's nuclear submarines on the base and just nuclear weapons in general. And I was working auxiliary security force, and I remember getting a phone call, and all the guys are saying, hey, you got to hurry up and get dressed. We need to get down. We need to get all of our stuff and our gear put together, and we need to go stand at this gate and stand off against these protesters. And I was, whipped up into a kind of fury, thinking, man, what's these protesters doing? I go out there, right, all in my the whole 9 yards, all right, totally decked out in my gear, with a gun, right, standing across from these people. Dude, we're talking people in their 70s and 80s and in wheelchairs that had flowers in their hands, and I'm serious, and that came over literally and offered us flowers. And I thought about that, and it put a real thing on perspective in my life, and thinking, man, how bad are these things for real? Like, and what kind of a culture rises up in their existence, right, in their shadow? If you have those kind of weapons, what kind of personality types are going to arise within your nation that has those? The kind that face off with old people in wheelchairs with flowers.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Do you think that it speaks to the human condition, the fact that we used our technology, or this grand technology that could give us almost self-sustaining energy, and we've decided to use it to end the lives of our enemies? In the sense of, do you just think that has to do with our human nature?
Oh, totally.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not foreign at all. I mean, fear, hatred, othering, scarcity. It's not just the human, in my opinion, it's not just the human condition, it's the condition of everything around us as well, and the kind of universe that we happen to live in. I think there's there's a lot of that. It would take a mass conversion. I mean, let's just be honest about it. All my wishes to the contrary. It would take a mass conversion, in a way, for people to have those fears quelled enough that they could say, we're going to smash our nukes into plowshares.
For sure.
That they're going to all go bye-bye.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it would. I don't know.
Oh, it'd take a grand reconstruction of people's thoughts.
It'd take almost a grand reconstruction of people. And I know I'm pessimistic about it. I know I am. And listen, I wish I was more optimistic. I do. I wish there was more sunshine going on for me here.
Fear is the thing that is the hardest to pull people's ideas away from. When people are scared, they cling to what they really think is going to keep them safe. This is something that continues in the article about us not being safer by having proliferation in the first place. Proliferation of nuclear weapons also increases the possibility that one will fall into the hands of terrorists. Perry has his own nuclear nightmare, born of a long and deep experience. In it, a gang secures enough uranium for rudimentary bombs, slips it into Washington, and detonates it on Pennsylvania Avenue. And yet, Perry laments, while this catastrophe would result in 100 times the casualties of 9/11, it's only dimly perceived by the public.
There's at least a possibility. And this is what's so weird is, all the talk about terrorists using Syrian refugee, right, getting in through the whole refugee process, or coming up through the Mexican border, or all of these things, and you hear it all the time. Man, what if the terrorists are trying to get their hands on some nukes? You hear that all the time, especially on the fearful right.
For sure.
You've got that all the time, and yet here we're talking about something that, of course, the right would love to have a buildup of our nuclear arsenal, a modernization of our nuclear arsenal. All the while, this is the very thing. This is the very thing that they're fearful that the bad guys would get their hands on, and they're like, we need more of it.
There's the daddy feeling of, well, I'll take care of it, though. The same reason that people have guns in their homes and leave them unlocked with bullets around and say, well, I just know that I can keep it away from my kids. We are not as responsible as we think we are, and that's our detriment.
After this, we're going to talk about Stacey Dash calling for the elimination of Black History Month. Don't go anywhere.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/Paleo Radio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
Perhaps we said the words tinfoil hat too many times, Jeremiah, but Alex Jones' podcast is a new follower of Paleo Radio Show on Twitter.
Dude, we are on the radar, brother.
That's right. If you want to become a follower, all you have to do is go to Paleo Radio Show and hit that follow button. Pretty dang easy.
Alex Jones' podcast, huh?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is.
Well, that means Putin might be listening, too, because Putin listens to Alex Jones' podcast. And he listens to the show. And we've said Putin a lot. We've talked a lot about this guy.
Arguably, it means that everything's true. FEMA camps are real.
All those dots are aligning.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right. Okay, we're getting right into this. Stacey Dash. Okay, do you know who Stacey Dash is,
Yeah,
Joe?
she was in Clueless.
She was in Clueless.
Old school movie. And then she wasn't...
Then on BET.
She was in Clueless, and then she was in a Kanye West music video where she gets on a plane and flies off in the middle of nowhere.
And she's gone. She's out.
And now she's a pundit on Fox News.
On Fox News, imagine. Of all places. You can't even imagine. All right, Stacey Dash calls for elimination of Black History Month and awards that celebrate African Americans amid Oscars backlash. This is by Ethan Sachs and Leonard Green over at New York Daily News. The 2016 Academy Awards, hosted by Chris Rock, will air live on Sunday, February 28th on ABC. And high-profile black leaders, including the Reverend Al Sharpton, have called for TV viewers to tune out of the telecast to protest the racial disparity. Filmmaker Spike Lee, Jada Pinkett Smith, and Michael Moore announced they wouldn't attend or watch the podcast at all. This is I saw this all over the news all week, Jeff.
Well, and we can do a little bit of math on it. There's 24 categories in the Academy Awards. Let's say there's only 3 nominees, and even though there's normally more than 3, that puts us at 72 individuals. And of 72 individuals, not one of them that's black even made it into these categories of nomination. So think about the movies Straight Outta Compton, Concussion, Creed,
Yeah,
The Hateful Eight.
with legitimate actors who happen to be black, right? Every single one of them blowing away audiences all around the world.
Sure, but not even hitting nomination, so it is a little bit ironic.
Well, Dash, she appeared Wednesday on Fox and Friends, and actually, I think I saw this on the website or something. I'm one of those guys that actually go there, check out some of their videos. And I think I saw it, and I was just like, I'm not going to check this out. And I really should have. I mean, she's talking about boycotting next month's awards ceremony over the issue. She said it was ludicrous.
She said to boycott was ludicrous.
Yeah, to boycott, the whole talk about boycotting, the whole thing, is just Looney Tunes. And she said, we have to make up our minds. Either we want to have segregation or integration. And if we don't want segregation, then we need to get rid of channels like BET and the BET Awards and the NAACP Image Awards, where you're only awarded if you're black. If it were the other way around, we would be up in arms. It's a double standard. We're Americans, period. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that makes the world really black and white, and I guess that's her type of outlook on it. Could one argue that everyday channels are white entertainment television? For instance, like TBS and Everybody Loves Raymond and these nightly shows that are on, the 7 o'clock. Think of any of the shows that have been on in the past 20 years that were big hit shows that were on between like 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. weekdays. And think about if many of them were a good representation of people that were any race other than white.
Even black shows.
And I think that the big thing to draw up on this is that the media's portrayal is just what it thinks the audience wants. If you think about the 1950s, what's the percentage of people that are white that have a television set compared to other races in America? Well, it's pretty high. So what's the likelihood you're going to get white, culturally driven shows like Leave It to Beaver? Well, pretty good. Because you have a whole bunch of white people that have the TVs. Now, you know what I mean? And as this incrementally builds, now you have an area where there's people, and we see that our country is much more diverse and is way, way more integrated than we originally had thought, if you are looking at how television has laid itself out. And so there has to be an area that's carved out for other cultures. For instance, like Telemundo, right? American shows that are in Spanish. This is a good thing. There's people that speak Spanish that are Americans.
There's an audience for it. That's a market argument.
That live in America. They are Americans, and that's the thing is, and they want to see their television, watch their media through the lens of people that are like themselves, much like white culture does. So when you look through TBS or TNT or USA or TV Land, and you don't see many different races on there, you go, man, I wish there was a place or a channel where I could go to see shows that are more about people like me and my culture.
And the listening audience has changed. I mean, you're totally right. If you think about, go back to the 1950s and say, how many black people had televisions in their homes in the 60s, Yeah. How many of these families had that compared to now? And even the people who were radically opposed, like the former me, that would have been radically opposed to everything we're saying, knows by admission and insistence in other arguments that this is true, if for no other reason than whenever they think about welfare, they always generically think about black people. And when they complain about how it's abused, they always talk about, well, you always see, satellite dishes on their homes all the time. How can you have food stamps if you always have your TV all the time? So you're fat and you watch TV, but you need government cheese. That's what you hear all the time, which is an admission that, listen, the viewing audience, even by your own claims, has dramatically changed. And if that's true, then the idea that maybe they would like certain actors that are kind of outside the white fold, that might be more probable than not.
Well, and I think the big reason to bring that up is just to say that there's a historical context to our media being whitewashed, particularly the shows that we watch, like sitcoms. You know what I mean? Like, Happy Days and stuff like that.
Yeah, Friends.
Right. And so it's just important to bring it up because there's not many shows that are to the contrary. There are now, and that's a good thing. There's more of them, and there should be more. But it's an important thing to bring up. The thing that Dash is saying, where she says we either have to have segregation or integration and getting rid of BET and BET Awards. Well, in a way, what she's doing is drawing the line of saying, look, the Academy Awards obviously is segregated. It's a white people thing. And you shouldn't get mad that it's a white people thing because we have our black people things. That's kind of what she was saying. Or she was saying, or we get rid of that, and then we'll finally be accepted. And that's still kind of playing on the idea of like, well, if you play by the rules and you're good, we'll maybe let you in.
It's weird because on the one hand, you're totally right. She admits in the argument, for her argument to really have force, it kind of has to be that way, that is the name of the game and you should be satisfied with the BET, the crumbs on the table, so to speak, in the analogy. But yet at the same time, she kind of treats it like it's a blank slate.
Absolutely.
Like it's like, that's not really the way it is. That bias isn't there. We're all just one United States. This is all ludicrous. It's like, dude, you're missing something that's visibly true. I mean, you can look at it and say, regardless, all the rhetoric aside from Hollywood, all that rhetoric aside, the people making the shots really are very wealthy, kind of cloistered white dudes.
Totally.
Right?
Dude,
I mean, it's
average
kind
age
of
of like 60-something.
Yeah,
Pretty old white boys.
kind of Fox News demographic.
Not technically going to be all thrilled about Straight Outta Compton.
Right. They might not even be interested in that at all. Maybe not relate to it even.
You know, maybe I'm being too judgmental, and there's a lot that are. But here's the thing: not enough to get anyone nominated for any award. You know, I think that's important to bring up. Now, Dash goes further and says that there shouldn't be a Black History Month. Now, this is where maybe people are going to think I'm taking a hard left turn, but I agree with her on this. I don't think we should teach Black history outside of American history in the same way. Having a month where we highlight it, if someone says Black History Month is a time where we look at it and we're highlighting this historical context for people, sure. But in a way, it's kind of like we learn American history for 11 months and it's how everything went. And, oh, by the way, here's this 1 month where we're going to talk about a whole different thing that happened at the same time, which was what black people were doing. And that's not owning the fact that America was a slave-driven society and that this is American history.
I can see pros and cons. And listen, I wasn't kidding when I said the former me would be radically against things that we're saying.
Totally.
And it's all, listen, you can go on YouTube and see it. It's all there. I left it up for you to check out. But to look at it and say, on the one hand, is it good to have something that's completely set aside based on the idea of race? In principle, I would say no. I would say, in principle, ideally speaking, no. But I've become at least more sensitive over the years, and I'm not saying it's right or that my sensitivity has brought me to a right conclusion, but simply that if you have a majority in a kind of privileged system that's in place, and you have a group that's trying to that's making leaps and bounds, but they're not getting the recognition that they deserve, what is the recourse at that point? And then what happens if the recourse becomes something that just goes on for a long period of time, even when the integration takes place? Like, what happens to the future of BET if they get there, if it becomes far more diversified, where they want it to be diversified? Would that become antiquated? Yeah. I mean, these are all considerations these are real things people have to think about.
That's an interesting thing to bring up is, does BET have a plan that says, hey, we hope that in 20 years we're no longer relevant because there's so many different people, there's so many different ethnic groups and diverse groups of people that are on television now that I just would be interested to see. Does BET say, this is what our plan is to phase ourselves out by hopefully having a diverse enough media? But the truth is, I don't think in 20 years we'll even have that.
And I think it's ridiculous what she said when she was talking about how it's astounding that we've had a president who's black in office for the past 8 years who gets most of his funding from the liberal elite in Hollywood, yet there are not very many roles for people of color. How can that be, and why is it just now being addressed? No.
She's totally being oblivious to the fact that there are people that are in great roles that had great actual movies that we witnessed that just got snubbed. Coming up next, National Review versus Trump. Going to be a good one.
If you leave, you can't come back in. PaleoRadio will return.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
Our boy Chris Heathen, creator and producer over at Under the Bible Belt podcast, he posted something on our Facebook, Joey Joe.
Yes, he did.
He's actually posted a couple times, and I encourage people to read both. But the most recent one was about, 5 hours ago. Posted from Nashville, Tennessee, says this. Watch this if you want to see how the NFL tried to bury the research confirming the irreparable damage concussions can cause. ESPN refused to run it even after they participated in its production because of how bad it made the league look. It's called League of Denial, the NFL's concussion crisis. It's by PBS, and this is in response to something that we talked about last week on episode 23.
Yeah, it is. When we were talking about football and concussions, and basically a doctor would come out and said that he thought that football is now immoral and kind of reckless to have as a sport. A really great link that he sent to us. I watched about a half hour of it. It's about an hour and a half long video, frontline video. It was really nice.
And you've seen it?
I've seen some of it, yep.
Yeah, powerful. All right, this is a piece called In Clear Violation. It's over at Chronicles Magazine. You can read that at chroniclesmagazine.com. It begins by saying, the publication of a special Stop Trump issue of National Review was heralded in a blaze of publicity. Editor Rich Lowry appeared on Fox News and was interviewed by Trump nemesis Megyn Kelly, where he proceeded to denounce the Donald as a threat to the intellectual integrity of the conservative movement. A symposium, and that's in quotations there, of anti-Trump conservatives was published featuring such luminaries as Thomas Sowell, Bill Kristol, Michael Medved, and a score of others likening the flamboyant real estate mogul turned GOP presidential frontrunner to Hitler, Mussolini, Juan Perón, and Andrew Dice Clay. I thought that was, as soon as I saw Andrew Dice Clay, I said, oh, man, I got to...
Why Andrew Dice Clay?
Why? I don't know. I haven't, believe it or not, I'm no longer getting... these fantastic National Review magazines in any kind of envelope or anything.
Oh,
a manila envelope. I'm bummed out, Joe. That's an inside joke, everybody.
Yeah,
Sorry
you do
about
need the manila envelope, don't you?
I do. I miss those days. All right, these polemics are accompanied by a furious editorial which attacks Trump as, quote, a philosophically unmoored political opportunist who would trash the broad conservative ideological consensus within the GOP in favor of a free-floating populism with strongman overtones, end quote. Further, the editors instructed their readers that, quote, he is not deserving of conservative support in the caucuses and primaries.
So they went heavy on him.
Oh, yeah. They went a little heavy on the guy, put a little pressure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they wanted to do a little stick it to him, but there's a problem with all of this. The National Review is not a for-profit business, is it?
Well, this is the thing, right? Problem number one, this whole thing altogether is against a candidate, right?
That's right.
I mean, fundamentally, what is it about? Is it about the issues? Are they talking about somebody who just happens to be already in office, right? It's during an election year. I mean, this is a real problem. And to have it to specifically go against a political candidate. Now, it wouldn't be a problem in other tax brackets. But if they are a 501c3, right, this nonprofit organization, as reported, like you said, by Politico, then you have a serious, you got kind of an issue here.
Oh, you have a real issue. This is from the article. This anti-Trump issue of National Review is, in effect, a campaign pamphlet directed against a political candidate. Indeed, the cover proclaims, quote, against Trump, and it's in clear violation of the IRS statutes that regulate in nonprofit organizations. So they obviously, if they're going to take the 501c3 status, they're going to have to change their tune with the Trump bashing.
They have to.
For good or for bad.
Well, and this is applied across the board. I mean, this really is true of any group that goes as a nonprofit. I mean, being a nonprofit is a serious thing.
Yeah,
it's not like a regular corporate structure, right? It's not set up the same. Its social purpose is supposed to be something different than that, and that's why one of the reasons, that is the reason why it's so infuriating when you see pastors, for example, get up and just blatantly do that. I mean, that's so ridiculous.
It would be like BCS, Bethany Christian Services, saying, don't vote for Hillary Clinton because we think that she's the spawn of Satan. Right. And just going on an anti-Hillary, like Hillary seriously is motivated by the devil.
In fairness, man, and this is the messed up thing, and I'm not saying this as a defense for what National Review did, but dude, the truth is this happens all the time. I mean, this really is. I mean, we're kind of talking, and I'm going to be honest with listeners from me anyway. Say, listen, this kind of way that we're talking about, this is pretty normal. I mean, this is actually standard fare that nonprofit organizations, a lot of nonprofit organizations, are very intimately involved with campaigns. How many politicians, both Republican and Democrat, have you seen preach inside of a church on a Sunday morning?
Oh, and they don't even have to be religious. Like, I can think of one that rhymes with, Planned Parenthood.
Right.
That's one that's a nonprofit that's pretty involved.
That's
in
one of those
politics
things. It's a garket, like a governmental market blur thing.
That's right, the governmental market. We made up that word the other day, the garket.
Just last night, I thought.
Yeah, it was last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
The regulations are clear and explicit, right? According to this article, nonprofit organizations, and actually, if I remember right, this is from the IRS. This is the guidelines right here.
This
okay,
straight from the horse's mouth.
This is it, folks. Nonprofit organizations must, quote, not participate in or intervene in, including the publishing or distributing of statements, any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office.
And this would fall under the...
That's kind of...
There you go. This would fall under the or in opposition to category. Definitely.
Right. Or in opposition to... And that's in a parenthetical. That's the thing. You got a couple things in parentheticals, including the publishing or distributing of statements. Right? Or in opposition to. It's like, dude, yeah, this is for real. According to the website, quote, the regulations further provide... This is the IRS website. The regulations further provide that activities that constitute participation or intervention in a political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to a candidate include, but are not limited to, the publication or distribution of written statements or the making of oral statements on behalf of or in opposition to such a candidate. Dude, this happens literally all the time, but it is in full force, on full display with this glorious kind of Roman Empire-esque Trump picture on the front. It's got like his name and it's gold and it's imperial and everything. It's like, dude, this right here is a gross violation. As far as I can tell, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm not a tax lawyer. I'm not an IRS scholar of any kind. But just sitting there reading this, it's like, I think you kind of blew over the line. I mean, it's not even one toke anymore. I mean, you're just way, way beyond.
Well, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the article does say, if a pastor goes up and makes a claim against a candidate, he can do so if he's not speaking for the church. But if he were to be going and saying, I'm speaking for the United Methodist Church when we say we don't want Ronald Reagan or whatever they're going to say, that would be the problem. And so they do give the caveat of saying if someone's speaking as an individual, yes, but if you're speaking for your nonprofit organization, you're making a boo-boo.
Now, I saw today, you've got Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell Jr.
Fan.
Jerry
Big
Falwell
fan.
Jr. He came out and officially endorsed Trump, and I knew. I mean, it was so blatant. And this is what drives me nuts, is that I watched a great lion's share of Donald Trump's speech at Liberty University, and I watched the lead up to that with the debate from the pundits and everything. And you had Jerry Falwell Jr. up there talking for a long time, and he was passionate about what was going on. I'm like, wow, what is he talking about? It was all about Trump and how Trump was amazing. And then he was on Hannity later, and Hannity's like, boy, it kind of sounded like you endorsed Donald Trump. And he's like, no, I was... Liberty is you can't do that. It's a.
He was very clear to state the rule. He was clear to state that.
And then not even a week later. What was it? A week later, he does that exact thing. But I think that what happens is that you can. I'm wondering if, as a pastor, if you can literally just say, "Well, I wasn't in the church when I did it" or something. I mean, what would be the difference between him endorsing what he was dodging from Hannity a week ago and what he just did?
Yeah, I don't know.
Other than the venue. I mean, maybe that's important. Yeah. But the IRS has a perfect example, and maybe this helps us. President B is the president of University K. And this is technical, but follow us. I mean, this is really kind of fun. President B is the president of University K, a Section 501c3 organization, so this nonprofit. University K publishes a monthly alumni newsletter that is distributed to all the alumni of the university. In each issue, President B has a column titled My Views. The month before the election, President B states in the My Views column, quote, "It's my personal opinion the candidate U should be reelected," end quote. For that one issue, President B pays from his personal funds the portion of the cost of the newsletter attributable to the My Views column. Even though he paid part of the cost of the newsletter is an official publication of the university. Because the endorsement appeared in an official publication of University K, it constitutes campaign intervention by University K.
Bingo.
So
that would put National Review in a bit of a pickle.
That would kind of make it like, because, they're partnering with what? The National Review Institute or whatever it was called. But this is the official publication. Like, they don't have another National Review magazine. It's like, and all this time we've really been hiding the real one.
Exactly. In the article it says National Review, as a nonprofit entity under the 501c3 status of the IRS code, is clearly analogous to University K. The magazine is in publication of the tax-exempt National Review Institute, whose editors are urging their readers to oppose Trump. In spite of the fact that the collected polemics on the issue are presented as a symposium, there is no debate, there are no dissenting voices, the verdict is unanimous, don't vote for Trump.
It was blatant. And they got, listen, National Review, I guess it's been struggling. I don't know. I mean, I like Buckley, even in his death. I like the guy. I'm not going to lie.
Hey, I like
his
too.
stuff. I disagree with him left and right. I mean, all the time. All right, he's totally a neocon. But at the same time, there's something to it. But, they're not only getting ripped on for it, they're probably going to get reviewed. I mean, I can't imagine them not getting their 501c3 status reviewed over this. I mean, then again, you see it rampant all the time in churches and everywhere else. So maybe they're just the next one. Maybe it's the new.
John Oliver did a whole entire segment on how people don't get caught with their 501c3 status, no matter what they say, especially in churches. And that was kind of the big push that he had, was basically saying, look, I can run a church right out of my TV show and you can't challenge it. Up next is going to be Hillary Clinton and possibly having a killer mic issue.
Yeah, it's going to be totally awesome. You're not going to want to go anywhere, my friends. You're listening to PaleoRadio.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadio at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
If you would like Paleo Radio to host, speak, or be engaged with you at any different event, you can contact us at paleoradioshow@gmail.com. Ask us a question, and we just may show up for you.
I would love it. It would be so much fun just to go to different places and meet different friends and allies and frenemies. I think it'd be just tons of fun.
It'd be a lot of fun. And you know what? Send it to us. It could get weird. It'd be interesting. We'd like to read them.
PaleoRadioshow@gmail.com.
This is an article out of Vice. It's from Drew Millard. Hillary Clinton has a killer mic problem. After the Democratic presidential debate in South Carolina last weekend, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders was represented by none other than Killer Mike. While it's pretty standard for campaigns to send proxies to wrangle in supporters, those proxies don't usually include a self-described pan-Africanist gangster rapper who's released music with everyone from Andre 3000 to Zach De La Rocha and made up one half of the acclaimed underground hip-hop duo Run the Jewels. There's no two ways about it. Sending Killer Mike into the spin room made Bernie Sanders seem cool. Damn cool. It lined up with a straight shooting, no fucks given attitude that characterized the Sanders' unlikely White House bid and helped the Democratic Socialists surge ahead of Hillary Clinton in the latest Iowa and New Hampshire polls. And Mike isn't the only rapper who's lent his cred of cool to the Sanders campaign. As a recent New York Times piece noted, the Vermont senator has also received endorsements from such artists as Big Boy, Bun B, and Little B.
And Killer Mike did a good job, Joe.
Oh, yeah, he worked that room.
That's what they were saying. They said that he just totally worked it, that he had a great time. He made a bunch of really fun references, that the press was loving it, the back and forth and stuff. And he made references to the Beastie Boys, to Martin Luther King Jr., right? He announced that what did he say? He became a supporter of Bernie Sanders.
By smoking a joint and reading some of his tweets.
Yeah. So, I mean, they had fun with it. And literally, it made him look really cool. But, I mean, listen, hey, in fairness, dude, Hillary Clinton has backers too, and she does. I mean, think about it. They referenced, because this was brought up, and you had an aide that emphasized that Miss Clinton's support from African Americans, and said that there was a vast support among them. And she named some of the people. It was Snoop Dogg, Usher, and Waka Flocka Flame.
Yeah, but I think this is the thing that's important. In the article, they say the response is telling. Yes, the aide did indeed name some black hip-hop artists who are supporting the candidate, like Snoop Dogg, Usher, and Waka Flocka. But the similarities with the Sanders supporters that Bromwich mentions and there, which is to say Killer Mike, Bun B, Little B, and Big Boy, are unequivocally looked at as political voices and thought leaders in their local communities, which is true. Those guys are very politically active and known as, more importantly, thought leaders. I think that's the biggest thing.
That they're thought leaders.
You know, it goes on in the article, kind of makes a few passing remarks. Snoop Dogg is largely viewed as a sentient weed joke these days, which is essentially true. Waka Flocka claimed that he himself would run for president in 2016 as well. And when he did finally endorse Clinton, he did it on the condition that she return the favor and help push his new album, Flockavelli 2.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so the whole thing was a joke.
It very well could have been.
Well, it sure seems that way. I mean, I would listen, if that happened to me, I would take it that way. And we talked about it in the lead up to this in the pre-show here, to say, listen, like how many things in history end up getting kind of in this category of something that's not really true and was kind of a joke, and it ended up being kind of taken seriously by at least other people and presented as a serious statement of fact, and then it just kind of blends in and just gets called history.
Well, I'm sure that 20 years from now, there's going to be someone who has an I told you so, where they're like, I told you Waka Flocka endorsed Hillary Clinton in the 2016 campaign. I Wikipedia'd that crap.
Yeah, they're going to have big, like, conspiracity shows.
Exactly.
Kind of like Alex Jones' podcast. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but good question, though, and I was wondering this, and I was saying, I am not part of the black community. I do not know.
What?
Yeah, believe it or not, Joe. Appearances are deceiving, but believe me on this. But see, here's the thing. If you asked African Americans, if you said, okay, choose between a candidate that all you know about either candidate is that behind one candidate is the endorsement of Snoop Dogg, Usher, and Waka Flocka, kinda, as a joke, but we're seriously taking it as something. Or, on the other side, Killer Mike, Bun B, Little B, and Big Boy. Now, I don't know a couple of these names. You do.
Yeah.
You know more than I do. But I would be interested to know what significance do they give these individuals? I mean, according to the article, they give Killer Mike. I know that one. Yeah. I mean, I know that that's taken much more seriously than Snoop Dogg. Popularity to the contrary, notwithstanding. Same thing with Usher. I mean, you don't really hear too many people talk about Usher, but I know Killer Mike. I don't know much about Bun B or Little B or Big Boy.
Yeah. Big Boy is the other half of Outkast with Andre 3000 as a rapper. He's really involved in Atlanta.
Now I feel ridiculous because I used to love that. Names befuddle me, my friend.
But he was involved in Outkast, but Bun B is also known as being very politically engaged. He's always had, in a lot of his raps, he's always been involved in kind of the political spectrum of things. A lot of the ways that Killer Mike is, and he's really active in his community and does donations and that sort of thing. So in terms of their hands-on help with the community, they're more like grassroots underground rappers. It's kind of like the endorsements are official as well. Like Snoop Dogg, Usher, Waka, these guys that are like known as establishment rappers in a sense. Not Waka so much, but Snoop Dogg and Usher at least. And then you have Big Boy and Killer Mike on the other side. So yeah, it's interesting. But it does bring up one thing about Hillary Clinton. It says that Clinton's aide failed to grasp the differences that is not particularly surprising. Cool has never really been part of the Hillary brand.
Yeah, and it reveals a weakness. And
it's a big one.
It's a big one. It's a doozy. But the article says here, it also underscores the superficial, almost shameless way the campaign approaches minority voter outreach, pandering to the different identity groups under the Democratic Party umbrella, as if they are demographic boxes to be checked off on a spreadsheet. Now, that's this person's opinion.
But that's damn well
scathing.
written.
Yeah, right. It's a scathing indictment of this and her whole purpose behind how she treats minorities. But listen, here's a litany of some examples, right? So if you say, well, that's really mean to say that it's a superficial and shameless way that she approaches minority voters, and that she looks at minorities and says, well, there's the checkbox. That's it. If you think that's really, really crazy, listen to this. Recently, this pander machine seems to have gone into overdrive, and I love the writing of this.
It is great.
Okay, recently, this pandering machine seems to have gone into overdrive. In the past month alone, Clinton has hit the dab on Ellen, and by the way, just to clear the air on
That's not drugs.
We're not talking weed. She wasn't
bonging dabbing with
dabs.
Ellen. Yeah. Just for all the young cats out there.
I'm not even gonna lie. When I first read this, it's exactly what I thought they were talking about. I'm like, I was so confused in the whole scene in my mind about Ellen actually sitting there bonging on the show, and then Hillary Clinton. I'm like, there's no way. I mean, I don't know what does that mean. It's a dance.
So I suck it up out of here?
Yeah,
like, no, that'd be terrible.
So she did the dab. So she did the dab on Ellen, sparked a backlash on Black Twitter for making a Kwanzaa-themed Twitter avatar. That's neat. And drawn virtual eye rolls from Latino voters for a campaign blog post listing all the ways Hillary is like a abuela. What is an abuela?
I'm not sure.
It's a grandmother. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
there
a
you
grandmother.
Go. Yeah, our sound guy, and apparently
a Spanish
genius,
extraordinaire.
Yes, extraordinaire. We had no clue. Nathan, you're less offensive, but no more subtle, are the millennial baiting tote bags, reaction gifs, Lena Dunham Instagram takeovers, GOP Star Wars villain listicles, and requests that Twitter followers describe their student loan debt in 3 emojis or less.
Yeah, man, what is it like?
Wow.
Like, I'm trying to think of a company that she's like, like a company. She's like The Gap. She's like The Gap, like trying so hard to be cool that it loses it. You know what I mean? Like way back in the day when we were all real youngins, The Gap hit and everybody loved it. But then it became this thing where it tried so hard to be hip, had that old lady on there with the pinstripes and the big old glasses and the weird dog and all those weird commercials and all that jazz. And that's what Clinton reminds me of, is just she's just trying so hard to be cool that it's becoming cliche.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, you look and you say 3 emojis or less. Your student loan debt. Like, I mean, I don't know. I just say, listen, your student loan debt, the thing that makes you like contemplate suicide sometimes. What I want you to do is to go on Twitter and post 3 emojis that kind of reflect your emotions.
Your
with it.
$20,000 in student
seriously,
loan debt.
What in the world? What in the world is she thinking? And the whole idea of how is she like your grandma? I mean, that is just weird to me. It just kind of is.
She doesn't seem like a granny to me.
No,
she seems like a machine.
Yeah, it's like you're right. Exactly. What would it be like?
Like checking things off a list. When he talks about a checklist, that's exactly as I think of it. Like, all right, we did the why I'm like the abuela for the Latinos. Check. And we've got some endorsements from some noted black people. Check. Okie dokie. Where else are we going to go? Like, it just seems like it's very planned.
So why is it then, do you think, that Hillary Clinton is so, at least in the polls, if people trust the polls, is wildly popular in the black community in the United States?
I honestly think in the black community, they loved Bill. Bill was real. So I think they loved Bill, and then there's a sense of Hillary Clinton's going to do some of the same things. But, man, politics has changed a lot in these past, 15 years or so. It's changed quite a bit.
Do you think that Hillary swaddling herself in the robe of Obama and Obama coming out and saying, hey, giving her praise, right, saying things that are good.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to make this almost kind of old school?
It will help her with the older black voters that Obama passed the torch like that. But the thing is, we can't look at the black vote as in one entity the same way we don't look at the white vote. It's age groups. Age groups are always more similar when you're looking at the voting. And black millennials are not necessarily going to be voting for Hillary Clinton.
She wants to continue the whole thing, though. She wants to take the mantle and build on what Obama's already done. I mean, I can only imagine that being a benefit for her campaign, for black people.
Absolutely.
In the United States. I think Bernie's got a bigger hill to climb than a lot of my friends do.
That's right. Well, we climbed another show's hill today, didn't we?
I know. It's ridiculous, dude. It's almost offensive.
It is. We have to think about doing a 2-hour special every 3 months or something.
That would be fantastic.
Just be glorious.
Yeah. It would be, dude. 2 hours of us. Come on.
Oh, man. Thank you guys once again for listening to Paleo Radio. We really, really appreciate it. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or to follow us on Twitter at Paleo Radio Show.
And make sure to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/PaleoRadio. It's been a whole bunch of fun. Have a great night, my friends.
We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Paleo Radio, exclusively with Secular Media Group.